Welcome to this August session of the Edina Reads Summer Series, From the Author's Home to Yours. I'm Dick Crockett, and I lead the Edina Community Foundation, which started Edina Reads about 15 years ago in collaboration with the Edina Library. My co-host is Maureen Millay-Smith, reference librarian, who has organized most of the nearly 70 programs we've had in Edina Reads. I'm greeting you today not from my home in Edina, but from my new Community Foundation home in the Southdale Office Center. We moved here because the Edina Library and Senior Center, as many of you know, has been closed to the public for the last several months and will in fact need to be vacated for some reconstruction project. That means that our Edina Reads programs will continue on a virtual basis for the time being. And in fact, our September program is going to feature an artist, a pair of artists actually, Nick and Ann Lagaris. Nick is a sculptor whose works grace Centennial Lakes Park. Here are two of them right here, the Dreaming of Flight sculptures. And his wife Ann produces beautiful watercolors. Today I'm excited about our opportunity to hear from an Edina author, Matt Goldman. Matt's a mystery writer with a sense of humor. And in fact, in the first book, Gone to Dust, he has a little theory or an explanation of how Edina bedrooms can be so big, and also what happens when Edina parents insist that their kids take piano lessons. I'm not going to give you the answers, you have to read the book to get that. Maureen's going to introduce Matt in more detail, and I'll turn the program to her now. She is herself an author with two books, When Charlotte Comes Home and The Enigma of Iris Magpie.
Good evening. My name is Maureen Millay-Smith, and I am one of the librarians at the Edina Library. I am here to introduce you this evening to the mystery writer, Matt Goldman. Matt is an Emmy Award-winning screenwriter who has written over 400 television scripts, including episodes of Seinfeld, Ellen, The New Adventures of Old Christine, and Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency. He was raised in St. Louis Park and attended the University of Minnesota. After college, Matt left for Los Angeles, where he began his career in both writing and stand-up comedy. He now lives in Minneapolis. What brought him to writing a mystery series? Matt told the online Star Tribune that television writing taught him story, dialogue, character, and series architecture. While television writing happens in writers' rooms, novel writing happens on a computer in a writer's home. Decisions are made by the author rather than by a consensus of screenwriters, showrunners, and producers. The time to delve deeply into character and plot by himself is something Matt Goldman relishes. What readers will enjoy about the Neil Shapiro mystery series is that the stories are centered in Minnesota, in cities and places that they will recognize. His first mystery, published in 2017, was Gone to Dust. It is set in Edina. Broken Ice followed in 2018 and The Shallows in 2019. And this month, Matt's fourth mystery, Deadwest, is being published. Matt Goldman is the perfect author to read in a world where we all must stay home for far longer than we could have imagined. His detective takes readers where we cannot go right now, into the homes and lives of people not so different from us. Neil Shapiro is a great guide, funny, thoughtful, and always a step ahead. And so now, from my home in Edina, I am happy to introduce you to Matt Goldman in his home in Minneapolis. The Edina Library and the Edina Community Foundation will have another program for you in September on the third Tuesday of the month at 7 p.m. See you then.
Hi, my name is Matt Goldman. I'm an author who lives in Edina, Minnesota. Some Edina residents know me because my first book, Gone to Dust, was set in Edina, and I'm going to answer some questions for you about what it's been like to write during the pandemic. The first question is, where was I when I learned about Governor Walz's stay-at-home order? And the truth is, I don't remember. I was probably at home. My family has taken the virus fairly seriously. My wife and I both have parents in their 80s, and so not only have we stopped contact with them, but we have, just in case, really looked out for our own health to make sure we don't get sick in the slight chance that we would spread it to them. What were my first thoughts when I heard about the stay-at-home order? Well, I actually felt relieved that was a mandate coming from our government, in the hopes that more people would stay at home, as opposed to some other states where they did not take the virus as seriously and things spread more quickly and continue to do so to this day. I also thought this is going to be a long haul, because it's not going to end until there's a vaccine, and I'm not a vaccine maker. That's not my business. But from what I've read, my guess is that won't happen until the beginning of 2021 at the soonest. So I thought, we're going to be in this for a while, and we might as well do what we can to make the best of it. Did I have to cancel any events because of the pandemic? Definitely. I have canceled dozens of events, personal appearances in bookstores and in libraries and at writers' conferences. I've had several events canceled. In fact, I was at something called the Left Coast Crime Writers Conference that takes place as it sounds like, on the West Coast somewhere. It was in San Diego in early March. I was there, and after one day they canceled it and everybody went home. So it started with that, and it's been dozens of cancellations that I've had to face, and some of that I can make up with things like this, but I do miss connecting with readers face to face. Do I usually write at home, and if so, could I describe my writing space? I do work almost exclusively at home unless travel or something requires that I work elsewhere. This is my space. We're in my home office right now. I will show it to you. We can look around a little bit, but this is it. And I usually start early in the morning, and I'm in here most of the day. Here is my desk. I usually don't work here. The only reason I have been lately is because I've been zooming into a television writer's room, and that's why I have a big monitor and a webcam attached to my laptop, but I usually don't use those things for novel writing. The most important thing you see on this desk during a pandemic is noise-canceling headphones. I could not survive without them. They've really saved the day during the pandemic. I have a backup pair right there. I have some others not pictured. There are my Deadwests. There's my Emmy Award, which is actually quite heavy and could be used against you in your own home as both a blunt and sharp object. These wingtips are really sharp and could easily skewer a person. That may have to be a murder mystery I write one day. Killed by an Emmy. My bookcase in my office is low. There are books all over this house, so I will show you some of those. Some of the ones that have been most important to me and influential in my career. I have an old-fashioned record player that's kind of new-fashioned, but once in a while I like to listen to vinyl. And here is my mandolin that I've been playing. Sorry about the terrible lighting there. That has also really helped me get through the pandemic and stay at home. And this is a classroom map from the 1970s. I'll see if I can show you this. I got it at a swap meet in Pasadena, California. It is not a relief map. It is a relief-like map of the world. I don't know what that means, but it's so old that it has, if you can see that, I don't know if you can, there's the Soviet Union, and in particular Leningrad, which is now called St. Petersburg. That's how old it is. I do not use it as a reference point. Here is where I do most of my writing. On this couch, there are usually dogs on it, but not at the moment. But that's where I do most of it. And the other very important thing in my office is this coffee maker. There is a coffee maker downstairs in the kitchen, but I can't take a chance sometimes. I have to drink it immediately when I wake up upstairs to make sure I get my day started. The question is, am I writing something right now or am I taking a break? I am writing something right now. In fact, I am writing two things. One odd result for me of the pandemic is that I worked in television a lot, and television, especially comedy, is written in rooms. Writers gather together and do the bulk of the work as a group. And because I'm no longer living in Los Angeles, and in fact had made a decision pre-virus not to travel to Los Angeles for work anymore, because I've done plenty of that, I thought, well, my TV writing days are probably over, but now those rooms are meeting via Zoom. And so quite unexpectedly, I got a call one day and asked if I would work on a new show. So I've been doing that during the day. That show will be on ABC. It's called Call Your Mother, and it stars Kira Sedgwick. I'm not sure of the air date yet because ABC hasn't announced the exact air date, but it'll be sometime within the next few months, I'm sure. And so I've been writing that, and I've also been working on a new novel. I have a new contract with Forge, and that book is not a Nils Shapiro story. It is a mystery though, and it is not set in Minnesota. It's set in South Carolina, where my mother's side of the family is from, so I'm having fun with that new location. So my new novel is called Deadwest, and it's the fourth book in the Nils Shapiro series. The first book started in Edina, Minnesota, and Nils has stayed in Minnesota for books 2 and 3. But in the fourth book, Nils is hired by a wealthy elderly couple who live in St. Paul on Summit Avenue, and their grandson has just inherited his trust fund. He's turned 35 years old, and he's moved to Los Angeles, and this elderly couple is scared to death. He's throwing away his millions investing in show business, and they send Nils out to see what's going on. It's a departure from the other books. The beginning, the middle, and the end take place in Minnesota, but the rest of the book is in Los Angeles. And I lived in Los Angeles a lot of years, about 20 years full-time and 10 years back and forth between here and there. And I always felt like a Minnesotan visiting Los Angeles. I never felt that that was my home and that I lived there. And I really wanted to show both the city and show business from a Midwesterner's point of view, who's seeing it for the first time. So even though I don't see it for the first time anymore, it still feels like that. And my earliest impressions of that place and that business still feel fresh to me. So I wanted to relay that through Nils. And it's not all bad. Los Angeles and show business have a lot of positives. Yes, there are the stereotypes of the overly slick people who are just out for money and fame, and that does exist, but it's also balanced by a lot of really good, hardworking people who happen to work in that business, and that's where their talent lies, so that's why they're there. Los Angeles attracts, I think, the best and the worst people in the world. Wonderful, creative people who have a lot to offer to the arts, especially in film and television. And then there's people who just want to get famous or get rich. But that can happen there. There is less of a structure to get from point A to point B than there is in a place like the Twin Cities. And that can be bad, but it can also be good. It really is like the Wild West out there. It's the book I'm most proud of. It starts like a more typical private investigator book, and then it veers off into a more personal story for Nils and the character of Jameson, for those of you who are familiar, and some pretty big changes in Nils' personal life that really change his outlook on working in a dangerous job. And so it starts like a PI novel. It is a PI novel, but it really does get into a more personal place. And Nils is a different person coming out of this book than he is going into it. Have I found any unexpected pleasures staying at home during the pandemic? Yes, definitely. My wife is a therapist. She's doing all her work from home, so we're both here together during the day, which is quite nice. We've been playing pickleball early in the morning. We picked that up, and we're having a lot of fun with it. It's a great form of exercise. We feel safe outdoors playing it. We've mostly just played singles, so it's just the two of us anyway, and we've had great fun with that. I picked up I've always wanted to play mandolin for years and years, and I thought this was a pretty good time to start, so that's what I've done. And I'm playing mandolin every day, and that's an unexpected pleasure. And the dogs are quite happy that people are always around. My only fear is they're going to get used to it and expect this all the time, and we'll have to break their little spirits when everybody goes back to their daily lives. Are there any great annoyances being at home? I wouldn't say great, but I think most people would agree there are some slight annoyances when you're around other people all the time and we really can't get a break from each other. We're all in separate rooms, everybody's doing their own thing, people go on walks, there's the occasional errand, but yeah, it's a little bit annoying, especially for me, I think, who's a writer and used to having my space during the day, and I like to get my head in a very daydreamy place, and that is not just when I'm writing, it's when I'm making a sandwich for lunch or taking the dogs for a walk, and when there's somebody around all the time, it's harder to do that. So I wouldn't say great annoyances or even anywhere close to great annoyances, but sure, there are slight annoyances. I think everybody I know would agree with that. I've had several conversations with author friends who are at one point or another going out of their minds. And we are introverts, so I think for extroverts, it has to be quite a bit worse. This question I've kind of already answered. What do our animals think of having people around? We have 2 dogs and 2 cats. The cats, I think one of them likes it, one of them probably would rather have a little bit more quiet time. The dogs definitely like having us around, especially the younger dog who's only 2. She's quite the hunter of squirrels and rabbits in the backyard, and to have somebody around who is always willing to let her out so she can check the backyard for rabbits and squirrels, I think she absolutely loves. The question is, have my readers written to me during the pandemic, and is there any one particular theme they have touched on? Yes, they have written to me, and yes, there has been one particular theme, which is where is Deadwest, the 4th Nils Shapiro book. The reason they've done that, and something I have not mentioned earlier, is that the original publication date for Deadwest was June 2nd, and my publisher pushed that back to August 4th, I think wisely. There's no sense in publishing a book when the bookstores aren't open. Now they're open, but obviously foot traffic is light. I know the ebook versions are selling very well. Audiobooks are selling. People are finding those during the pandemic. And the print books have picked up too. There was a little dip when this first started, But most of my readers have been asking, where's Nils number 4? Why do we have to wait so long? And the reason is the pandemic. So the book was published August 4th, and so it is now completely available in all formats, ebook, regular print, and audio. And that's been the big question. I've heard from quite a few people from all over the country. The question is, would I consider writing about the pandemic or setting something during the pandemic? And if so, would I write it as a mystery or maybe something for television? I don't know. Right now, I would say I would not write about the pandemic. We're all living through it. It's been a big adjustment for everyone. It's been terribly difficult for a lot of people. Those who've got sick, those who've lost loved ones, those who've lost their livelihoods. I think it is something that can inform future stories, but I don't know if I want to write about it. I've talked quite a bit about this with author friends, especially those who live in New York, and they said after 9/11, everybody said a book during 9/11, and they did not sell, because I think readers want an escape, at least in fiction, and that's what I want when I read fiction too. So to have a character whose life has been informed by the pandemic, maybe they made a job change, maybe living in tight quarters with somebody altered their relationship. I think that's fair game for future books or TV stories, but writing about the pandemic, at least right now, I'm not interested in doing that. The question is, well, already the world has changed. What changes am I seeing firsthand? A lot, as we all have. Kids not going to school, who are now home. Both of our older kids who live in apartments and have jobs are mostly working from home, so it's changed their lives quite a bit. Bookstores are no longer hosting events because people can't gather. Can't go to a Twins game, which is sad for me. These are little things. I would say I and everyone in my family has been extremely lucky during this. We feel grateful and fortunate that we're able to continue working and that we've stayed healthy, and the kids who are still in school, even though it's not the same, they are able to continue their education, and we feel really lucky about that. So it's been a big change, and 100 years ago, this country went through it and came out of it and got back to a normal pattern. So I'm hoping these changes are temporary and that we can all look forward to getting back to life is what we know is normal. What is the new normal going to be like for writers? I think the actual job of writing has changed very little. If you like to write in an indoor coffee shop, that's going to change for you probably, but this job is a solitary job. There are aspects of it that are not solitary. There's research, there's getting out in a particular field, talking to people, getting to know them, hearing their stories. A lot of that part of the job is going to move to Zoom or something like that. But for the most part, writers sit in a room by themselves and write. So what they draw inspiration from may change, but it may not. That's just something we'll have to find out about. Most writers write stories that have been brewing in them for quite a while, whether they know it consciously or not. And so if this country is shut down for a year or almost a year or 18 months, I don't think it will damage most writers' process. Is that right? Most writers' processes? I don't know. I need to look that up in a special book. I think it's called a dictionary. Here is Deadwest. This is my latest Neil Shapiro mystery. It is largely set in Los Angeles, but starts in Minnesota. The middle is in Minnesota, and so is the end. And it's a different cover than my other books, which feature a lot of blood splatter. There's no blood splatter on this one. I think they ran out of blood. Now I'm going to show you some books that have been a big influence on me. This is Raymond Chandler's The Long Goodbye, and when I read Chandler, that was my inspiration for being a crime writer, because his character, Philip Marlowe, narrates in the first person, has a great sense of humor and wonderful social observation. And I thought, those are the things I've been doing as a comedy writer for 25 years. So when I read Chandler, it kind of was eye-opening for me and really lit a fire under me to write crime fiction. This is a collection of essays by E.B. White. I like his fiction and his nonfiction. Most of his fiction, that at least the stuff I know of, is children's, like Charlotte's Web and Stuart Little. And again, it's the prose that drew me in. His essays are wonderful, really nice stories. But when I see people write the way I hear people talk, it's a big inspiration for me. And it doesn't sound written. It just sounds like a person talking, and as simple as that reads, it's one of the harder things to do, but E.B. White was a big inspiration for me. Dennis Lehane's The Given Day is one of my absolute favorite books. It takes place in 1919 in Boston and features the Boston police strike and the riots around that. And it's a wonderful piece of crime fiction and just great storytelling. This is one of the great American novels as far as I'm concerned. I'm including a David Sedaris book in here because I think humor is very important, at least in my work, and voice is the most important thing. And I think David Sedaris' voice is one of the best American voices out there in the literary world. He's a big influence on me. I read Colson Whitehead's The Underground Railroad this year, and it's a wonderful example of two things. One is it shows how fiction can be more true than nonfiction, because it gets to the heart of the matter rather than the facts surrounding the matter. So I don't want to spoil this book for anyone who hasn't read it, but it takes a few liberties, but I think it conveys a great truth in doing so. And it's also important just to tell these stories. We need to hear from everybody because everybody's story matters. I'm including Gabriel Garcia Marquez's 100 Years of Solitude because this is my absolute favorite book. I can't even explain why. It is an example of magical realism. I don't write magical realism. I doubt I ever will. But I just absolutely love this book. Highly recommend it if you've never read it. Anthony Horowitz's Magpie Murders. Not the Magpie Murders, Magpie Murders. And that ends up being an important point in the book. This is a mystery within a mystery. If you like crime fiction, I cannot recommend this book enough. It is absolutely wonderful. Hope you enjoy it. This is Joe Nesbo's Nemesis. It is one book in the Harry Hole series. Joe, or I think he pronounces it Yo, is a Norwegian crime writer. His books are a little on the dark side, like all Scandinavian crime fiction, but I highly recommend. The character of Harry Hole is quite engrossing. Lynn Truss's Eats, Shoots, and Leaves is a book about grammar, and if you're into that kind of thing, this is one of the better ones out there. I highly recommend it. It's a fun and informative read. The Cuckoo's Calling by Robert Galbraith. Actually, Robert Galbraith is the pen name of a famous author named J.K. Rowling. This is the first book in a private detective series featuring a character named Cormoran Strike and his assistant Robin, and there are 4 of them out right now. I think the 5th one is coming out sometime in 2020. If you like things set in London and you like a good complicated mystery, these are great reads. She's a great writer, and it's nice to see her writing for adults. November Road by Lou Berney. This book won a ton of awards last year. I highly recommend it. This takes place around the time of the Kennedy assassination. Lou is a wonderful writer. He has several books out. They're all good. And this one, though, is one of my absolute favorites. I included John Hassler because he's one of the many Minnesota writers who have influenced me. I really devoured these books when they were written. Boy, I don't even know when, quite a while ago. But I really enjoyed them. And I think for all of us who grow up in Minnesota, we feel like, oh, we're just this state in the middle of the country. What do we have to offer? But when Minnesotans do great things, at least for me, I found it quite inspiring. So if you haven't read these books, you may want to give them a shot. Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment. This is one of my absolute favorite books. I've read it several times, and one thing that really irks crime writers is that we get defined as crime writers and excluded from literary discussions. Now, some crime fiction is definitely not in the literary category, but a lot of it is, and some of the great literary books over all time are crime fiction, not just by the title of Crime and Punishment, but the story from page 1. This is a wonderful book that gets into the psyche and into the ethics of crime. So this book's a big influence on me.